Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to bring to the attention of the House a couple of matters. And the first is I'd like to pay tribute to a person in my community I've known for many years but has recently passed away. And I say a tribute, this is not meant to be an eulogy, because in the time allocated I wouldn't probably be able to cover his full life and contribution to the community of Gawler. So it's a tribute to the work and particularly to the history of the town of Gawler. Mr. Speaker, I'm actually referring to Brian Thom. Brian was an elected member of council at the town of Gawler from 2000 to 2014. He actually joined council the same year I became the mayor. He also, that period also included periods as deputy mayor from 2006 to 2011 and also 13 and 14 years. He was a member of the Apex Club for 22 years. He was curator of the Gawler Anglican Cemetery for 20 years. And in 2015, for his contribution to the community, he was acknowledged as the 2015 Citizen of the Year. Mr. Speaker, though, all these things are important, but in terms of what Gawler know Brian more widely about is his contribution to the history of town, and particularly the preservation of the history and also the communication of history to the community. Mr. Speaker, Brian was actually the founding founder and chairman of the Gawler History Team. And that, in Brian's own words, that he didn't see himself as a researching historian, but he had a passion for photographic history. And so the work he did has actually been about how do you actually bring the history of Gawler to life, and in particular, how do you bring the history of Gawler to life for young people. So some years ago, he went to a communications seminar, and he asked the person who was speaking about communication in community, etc. He said to her, how do you explain to the youth about Gawler's history? And the answer was that you put it in a medium that they use and understand. And so for a person of Brian's age, it meant going online, and that he would have found that a new thing, I think, Brian, at the time. But Brian then called a group of people together to discuss how it could be done. A majority of people supported his idea of creating a website, and the Gawler History Team was founded. The core team was formed of those with different skills and passion to develop the website and to communicate the history of Gawler. It was decided to have monthly meetings with guest speakers on topics relevant to Gawler's history, and their information was actually put on the website as well. 4 years later, they actually decided that the guest speakers should be videoed and also the talks be put on the website. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to be a guest speaker a couple of years ago when I talked about the Labor history of Gawler, both the Labor in terms of union, but also the Labor Party's history of Gawler. And Brian was an incredibly meticulous person, very well organised, and I got asked 2 years ahead of time when I'd be the guest speaker. I did at the time remind him that I might not be the member because it was the election in between. He said, irrespective if you're the member or not, you can still come and speak about the matter. So there's been a diversity of speakers from various professions to social interests and charitable organisations. The most recent talk I went to, which is actually at the AGM, was about the history of the Salvation Army in Gawler. And that was actually the last meeting that Brian attended, Mr. Speaker. Brian had been diagnosed with motor neuron disease only a few months ago, and at the annual general meeting I was actually quite shocked how his condition had deteriorated, but I was so pleased that he was able to attend the annual general meeting, and the history people were able to thank him for his contribution, and that a presentation was made. Mr. Speaker, Brian's contribution towards the history of Gawler cannot be underestimated, and he's actually left a huge legacy for others to follow. So I pass on my condolences to Bev, his wife Bev, sons Richard, Michael and their families, and may he live in his history world up there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss if I didn't quickly also mention today that this week is Service Club Week, and that it's a time when we can actually acknowledge the contribution made by service clubs in my community. And I will quickly mention those because we have quite a few, Mr. Speaker, if I could. They have the Apex Club of Gawler, the South Australian Country Women's Association Buttlebrush Ladies Group. We have also South Australian Country Women's Association Gawler, another group. The Gawler Freemasons, the Kiwanis Club of Roseworthy Hewitt. We have the Lions Club of Angle Vale, Lions Club of Gawler, Lions Club of Elizabeth Playford, Rotary Club of Gawler Light, Rotary Club of Gawler, the Rotary Club of Playford, the View Club of Gawler, the Zonta Club of Gawler. Mr Speaker, all these service clubs do a wonderful job in serving the electorate of Light.
The member for King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.